I never thought I'd be humiliated like that, right there on the sidewalk, in broad daylight, in front of people who didn't even try to hide their judgmental stares. It all started with a routine stop outside a gas station. I had just stepped out of my car, my work badge clipped to my blazer, heading inside to grab a bottle of water. I'd done nothing wrong, but the moment I handed my ID to the officer, after the store clerk had suspiciously called him over, everything changed. He looked at my federal ID, scoffed, and then laughed right in my face. "This has got to be the worst fake I've ever seen," he said, shaking his head. "Where'd you print this? Your college dorm?" His voice was loud, he wanted people to hear, and they did. A few people gathered nearby. I saw the way they looked at me. Not one person stepped forward, they just watched like it was some sort of performance. I felt my chest tighten, my throat close up, but I didn't cry, I didn't yell. I just stood there, swallowing every ounce of frustration, reminding myself that reacting would only make things worse. He held my ID up, waved it around like a trophy. "Nice try, sweetheart. You might want to put more effort into your little costume next time." I wanted to scream, but instead I just said, "That ID is real." He laughed again, harder this time. "Sure it is, and I'm the president." What happened next? Well, let's just say that laugh didn't last long. In fact, his whole face changed, fast, and when the Secret Service showed up, that smirk he was so proud of, gone. Completely. "My name is Maya Johnson, I'm 27 years old, and I work as a cybersecurity analyst for a federal contractor. I deal with highly sensitive information, monitor threats you wouldn't believe, and protect systems most people don't even know exist. It's not flashy, and I don't wear a badge on my belt or carry a gun, but I take my job seriously, because lives depend on what I do." Not too long ago, I was granted special federal clearance. It took years of proving myself, background checks, interviews, tests, evaluations. I earned it. Every bit of it. But sometimes, it feels like none of that matters the moment someone sees the color of my skin. I grew up on the south side of Atlanta. My mom raised me by herself. She worked 2 jobs, one as a school secretary during the day, and one cleaning offices at night. We didn't have much, but she gave me everything I needed: discipline, self-worth, and the belief that I could do anything. But she was honest with me too. "You'll have to work twice as hard to get half as far," she used to say. "But don't ever let that stop you." And I didn't. I was the quiet girl in class who stayed behind after school to ask questions, the one who went to library clubs, instead of parties, the one who kept her head down, and eyes forward, because I couldn't afford distractions. While other kids were dreaming about fame or sports, I was dreaming about systems, coding languages, and networks, about making something secure, something strong, because I wanted to be strong too. But no matter how far I've come, I still face the same looks, the same doubts. People assume I'm the intern or the receptionist. They speak slowly to me, like I might not understand big words. They question my ID more than they question anyone else's. I notice, every time. That's why I carry myself with care. I dress sharp, I speak clearly, I stay calm, even when I'm being judged, because I know I don't just represent myself, I represent every other young black woman trying to make it in a world that keeps asking us to prove ourselves again and again. That day at the gas station wasn't the first time someone didn't believe me, but it was the first time someone mocked me so loudly, so publicly, and so confidently, as if my success was a joke. And honestly, for a second it made me feel like I didn't belong, but just for a second, because deep down, I knew who I was, and soon so would he. It was supposed to be just another workday. I had a morning meeting scheduled at a secure federal facility about 45 minutes outside the city. Nothing unusual. I'd reviewed my notes the night before, packed my laptop, and left early enough to beat traffic. I wore a navy blue blazer, pressed slacks and low heels. Professional but comfortable. My badge hung around my neck, and my ID sat safely in my wallet. About halfway there, I stopped for gas and a bottle of water. I pulled into a quiet station off the highway, one I'd been to before. I wasn't thinking about anything serious, just mentally reviewing a few key points for the meeting, while deciding whether I wanted a protein bar or a banana. Inside, I grabbed what I needed and headed to the counter. The clerk, a man in his late 40s, looked me up and down when I handed him my ID. He narrowed his eyes like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "What is this?" he asked, turning my ID over in his hand. "That's a federal contractor ID," I replied calmly. "It's real." He stared at it again, then at me. "You trying to buy this with a fake badge?" I blinked, confused. "Excuse me," he tossed the ID on the counter like it disgusted him. "You can't buy restricted items with a fake ID, ma'am. I'm calling the police." It took me a second to register what he was saying. Restricted items. I looked down. Bottle of water, granola bar, a pack of allergy medicine, over-the-counter stuff. Nothing serious. "I'm not using a fake ID," I said slowly, trying to stay calm. "You can scan it. It's valid." But he had already picked up the phone. I stepped back, heart pounding, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I knew how fast situations like this could spiral. 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled in. The officer got out, adjusted his belt, and walked straight toward me with that heavy, deliberate stride that made it clear he wasn't coming to ask questions. He was coming to accuse. "You the one flashing fake government IDs?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "I work for a federal contractor. That's my real ID." He motioned to see it. I handed it over, hoping he'd at least scan it, ask questions, do his job properly. Instead, he looked at it for 2 seconds, smirked, and then let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "You expect me to believe this is real? You some kind of secret agent or something?" he said, loud enough for the small line forming behind me to hear. His tone, his posture, it all said one thing. He didn't see a professional, he saw a problem. And the moment he walked through that door, he had already decided who I was, and who I wasn't. He held my ID between 2 fingers, like it was a crumpled receipt, not a government-issued credential. His laughter cut through the air, sharp, loud, and filled with something that felt uglier than just disbelief. "This is the worst fake I've seen all year," he said, still chuckling. "You must have printed this in your dorm room or something. Look at the hologram. It's not even centered." I felt every eye in that small store turn toward me. The customers, the clerk, even someone pumping gas outside, had turned to watch. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor. But I couldn't. So I stood there, feeling like I'd been stripped down to nothing. "It's not fake," I said, doing everything I could to keep my voice steady. "I work for a federal cybersecurity contractor. That's a real government ID, issued through clearance." He raised an eyebrow like I'd just claimed to be a time traveler. "Oh really? What are you, some kind of secret agent?" Another burst of laughter. This time from behind me, someone in the line chuckled too. I clenched my fists, not in anger, in restraint. "I'm a cybersecurity analyst," I said clearly. "We don't walk around in suits with earpieces, we protect data. Systems. Threats." Sure, he said sarcastically. "You and every other TikTok spy." He turned the ID over again, and gave a mock nod. "Impressive Photoshop skills. Really, if you weren't trying to impersonate a federal employee, I'd almost be impressed." "I'm not impersonating anyone," I said. "That ID was issued to me through a federal vetting process. You can call." He cut me off by holding up his hand. Yeah. Let me guess, you got connections, right? Some government friend who pulled some strings. Or maybe you just ordered this off the internet." He looked around as if waiting for applause. No one said a word, but their silence was enough. I felt my cheeks burn with shame, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because he'd taken everything I'd worked for, and reduced it to a joke. "You're not qualified to tell me what's real," I said, quieter now. "You don't even know what kind of clearance that is." He ignored me. "I'm confiscating this joke of a badge," he said, sliding it into his pocket. "If it turns out to be real, you'll get it back." But I wouldn't hold my breath. And just like that, the ID I'd worked so hard to earn, the symbol of everything I'd overcome, was gone. Taken from me like it meant nothing. I stood there, shaking, humiliated and powerless. But under all that shame, a spark started to burn. Because while he laughed and mocked and dismissed me, He had no idea who he was really dealing with. And he definitely had no idea who was about to show up. The moment the officer turned his back and walked toward his cruiser with my ID still in his pocket, I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. My hands were trembling so hard I nearly dropped it. My heart pounded against my ribs, not from fear, but from rage. From injustice. From knowing I had to defend myself in a situation that never should have happened. I opened my secure contact list and tapped the name I wasn't supposed to use unless it was absolutely necessary. Federal Security Support Line, this is Agent Morales. This is Maya Johnson, clearance code 718Z, Alpha. My federal ID has been confiscated by a local police officer under accusation of forgery. I am currently being detained at a gas station on Route 84 and Broadstone. I need verification dispatched immediately. Agent Morales didn't hesitate. Location received. Stand by. That was all, no questions, no runaround. Just action. And that alone gave me enough strength to lift my chin and turn back toward the officer. He was leaning against his car, chatting with another officer who had just arrived. They were laughing about something, glancing my way. I took a deep breath and walked closer. Carefully. I've contacted federal security, I said evenly. Loud enough for both of them to hear. He looked up, amused. Oh, you did? Huh. Yes, I said. They'll be verifying the ID you just confiscated. He laughed again, but it was different this time, forced. Well, good. I'd love to meet your imaginary security team. He turned back to his conversation like I didn't exist. But I saw it. The flicker of hesitation in his eyes. The twitch in his jaw. 10 minutes passed. Then we heard them. 2 black SUVs turned into the lot, tires crunching over the gravel. The air shifted. The same people who had watched me get mocked now stared as the vehicles stopped with purpose. The doors opened, and 2 men in dark suits stepped out. No hesitation, no confusion. They moved like they knew exactly who they were looking for. And suddenly, for the first time that morning, I wasn't the one being questioned. I was the one being found. The 2 men stepped out of the black SUVs with a quiet authority that filled the entire gas station. They didn't rush or look around. They simply scanned the scene with calm, precise eyes, and spoke in low, controlled voices. One of them immediately approached the officer who had been so quick to dismiss me earlier. "Where is Maya Johnson?" the agent asked without preamble. The officer's confident smirk faltered. His face went pale, and he looked around like he suddenly realized this wasn't a routine traffic stop anymore. "Ah, she's over there," he stammered, pointing in my direction. The second agent reached into his jacket and pulled out a shiny badge. He flipped it open, and the metallic shine caught the sunlight. "This is Special Agent Reynolds. Secret Service," he said firmly. The other man showed his badge too. "And I'm Special Agent Carter." The officer swallowed hard, staring at the badges as if they were foreign objects. "I didn't know," he muttered. Agent Reynolds held up the ID I'd given the officer earlier, the very one he had laughed at and confiscated like it was nothing. He turned it slowly in his hands. "This isn't just real," he said quietly, but with emphasis. "This is classified level access." The officer's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. His eyes darted from the badges to the ID and back again. "You're telling me this is legitimate?" he finally asked, voice shaking. "It is," Agent Carter said. "Miss Johnson here holds a security clearance that gives her access to sensitive information critical to national security." Reynolds looked directly at the officer. "You just confiscated her federal ID and mocked her credentials in front of multiple witnesses." The officer shifted uncomfortably. I was just doing my job. We get a lot of fake IDs." Agent Reynolds shook his head slowly. "That may be. But you don't get to question someone's credentials based on assumptions or stereotypes. Especially not when it involves classified federal clearance." Turning back to me, Carter said quietly, "Miss Johnson, please accept our apologies for what you've endured here today." I nodded, too stunned to speak. After everything. The laughter. The humiliation. It was a strange mix of relief and exhaustion washing over me. Then Reynolds spoke again, directing his gaze at the officer. "We're going to need to speak with your superior immediately. This kind of misconduct has serious consequences." The officer's face paled even further. He pulled out his radio and muttered something. Within minutes his supervisor arrived. A tall man with a stern look who didn't waste time. Reynolds and Carter briefed the supervisor quietly but firmly. The officer who had treated me with such disrespect looked down at the ground, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The supervisor turned toward me and said, "Miss Johnson, I want to apologize for what you experienced here today. This is unacceptable behavior, and it will be addressed." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel vindicated. But after years of being doubted and dismissed, apologies felt hollow, like words without weight. Still, as the Secret Service agents stood by my side, I felt a powerful truth settling in me. I had been seen. I had been heard. And no amount of laughter or mockery could take away what I had earned. The officer who laughed in my face had been caught off guard, and so had I. But this time the tables had turned, and I was the one holding all the cards. The officer's supervisor arrived swiftly, his face tight and serious. He took in the scene. The two Secret Service agents standing firm. The officer who had laughed at me now looking embarrassed and unsure, and me still holding on to whatever dignity I could find. Agent Reynolds stepped forward and began briefing the supervisor in a quiet but direct tone. He explained everything. The false accusation, the confiscation of my ID, the mocking, and the clear profiling that had taken place. The supervisor listened carefully, his expression hardening with every word. When the agents finished, he turned sharply to the officer, his voice low but firm. "This kind of behavior is unacceptable. You have no right to treat a citizen, especially one with federal clearance, this way. You're being reprimanded immediately for misconduct and racial profiling." The officer's face flushed, and he nodded without protest. Then the supervisor turned to me. "Miss Johnson, on behalf of this department, I want to apologize. What you experienced here was wrong, and we are taking steps to ensure it doesn't happen again." His words hung in the air, but to me they felt thin, like a bandage stretched too tight over a deep wound. It was a public apology, sure, but the damage, that ran deeper than any words could reach. As the crowd that had gathered slowly dispersed, one of the Secret Service agents, Carter, leaned in quietly and said, "You handled that better than most people in your position would have." His words caught me off guard. Not because I didn't believe them, but because I hadn't realized how much I'd been holding in: the frustration, the hurt, the disbelief. I nodded, grateful for the recognition. That day, I learned something important. Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about standing tall, even when you feel like you're crumbling inside. And sometimes, it's about knowing when to ask for help, and when to make sure people know the truth. Because the truth matters, even when others try to ignore it. Later that night, after everything had settled and I was finally home, I sat on my couch staring at my ID, the very same one that had been called fake, laughed at, and tossed around like it was meaningless. I ran my fingers over its edges, not because I needed to prove it was real, but because I needed to remind myself that I was real, that everything I'd worked for mattered, even if some people refused to see it. What happened at that gas station wasn't the first time I'd been second-guessed. It wasn't the first time someone looked at me, young black female, and assumed I didn't belong. And sadly I knew it wouldn't be the last. People like me are questioned more, challenged more, watched more. We walk into rooms and feel the weight of proving ourselves before we even speak. We carry excellence like armor, because we have to. That officer didn't just doubt my ID, he doubted me, my intelligence, my place, my worth. But I refused to let that define me. I didn't just earn that ID, I earned the right to walk through this world without being questioned at every turn. I earned my position, my clearance, my voice. And no one gets to strip that away with a laugh or a look. So I'll keep going. I'll keep building. I'll keep showing up. Not just for myself, but for the girls who will come after me. Because one day, they'll hold their heads high, and not have to fight just to be believed. And that to me is worth every second of this journey. If you've ever been doubted, disrespected or dismissed, keep your head up. Your truth doesn't need permission to exist. You don't have to shrink to make others comfortable. Your presence, your purpose, your path, it all matters. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, if you've ever felt that same weight, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Help raise awareness about everyday bias and the silent strength we carry. And remember this, let them laugh. Because one day, your truth will make their jaw drop.